Hey guys, Nathan Lazak here, and thanks so much for taking the time to read this tutorial and the 4-step cheat sheet framework to secretly hypnotize people and make them do what you want. Of course, you may be thinking there's some catch here, but this video is pure content, so you can slyly introduce how you can solve a situation that you currently face. Now, this strategy is something I always use before I decide to engage in conversations to influence others. And when you practice this, you'll see why it's something you should be doing before you use any persuasion or influence technique, period. And by this, I mean there are, of course, more specific techniques, such as language patterns and psychological tricks and sequences or anchoring and body language dynamics and more. But obviously, we need to learn the framework so we can sort of use those skills as an amplifier to what generally works, like a hidden code behind your conversations, if you will. It doesn't matter if you're new to covert influence or a seasoned pro, the strategy works really well. It's been working well for me and everyone else I've been sharing it with, and I believe that after you do this, it'll work well for you too. What I think you'll enjoy the most about this, however, is that it isn't complicated to learn, and it gives you incredible insight about what someone really wants and needs to hear, so you can influence their inner mind to change or take an action or even to respond in the way you decide. Now, here's a little bit of a caution. This isn't a one-size-fits-all strategy. As with all persuasion and influence strategies, whether covert or direct, don't expect it to work like 100% of the time every time. Nothing works 100% of the time in life, period, and may require a few attempts or even adjustments. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't work right away for you. Just keep working the framework and you'll discover the essence behind why it's one of the first things that I like to always begin with. Furthermore, it could take time for this strategy to sort of take effect. That means that when you use it with someone, they may not change or respond right away, but give it some time and see if the behavior changes after a few days. If it doesn't, then you can adjust your approach and activate this framework again from a different angle. So here are some ways about how you can go about using this strategy. You can use it in your marketing and sales, which happens to be one of my favorite things to do, especially if you're in business for yourself or an entrepreneur, or you want to make more sales. You can really get in the minds of your customers so you can speak their language and incidentally convert a higher number of people into buyers. Of course, you can use it in copywriting, and copywriting is nothing more than just like email copy or articles or blog posts or simply sales letters or sales copy, even videos that you might make. And if you really go through this strategy, you can use it in your copywriting so you can convert a higher number of prospects into sales, which incidentally means more money, right, in your pocket. You can use it with your children and their behavior or any kind of conflicts that you might have with them. You can kind of apply this 4-step strategy so you can correct their behavior without any remorse or problems and sneakily influence them to begin to change. Of course, you can use it with your spouse or your friends, obviously, so you can get more of what you want and don't want in that relationship. You can use it with your parents, your peers, your friends. Like I said, you could use it to. I've known some people who have used this strategy to turn friends into lovers. I know a lot of people get into sometimes where they really like this girl or they like this person, but they became friends and they don't know how to go about doing it. So you can use your process to that. You can use it to persuade groups of people, like public speaking, sort of sway them your way of thinking. So if you're in politics or you're doing a speech or you're speaking on stage, it's really powerful because you'll be communicating to them on a very deep subconscious level. And you can even use this strategy on yourself to really kind of motivate you to move into the right direction. And as we go through this, you're going to find out that it can be used in pretty much just any kind of social situation, period. If you're a boss and you have employees, you can use it with them, or you can use it with your coworkers, or you can even use it on your boss, right? Now, I know that there are a ton of different mind control strategies out there, and what you're encouraged to do is first just wing it, okay? When you learn this, just give it a try. Do your best with it, and don't be too concerned with whether or not you're doing it right, okay? We learn best through experience, of course, but often the first couple of times we use something new, we won't be as effective with it if we were to use it, 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 or 21 or more times. Okay. So I know there's a lot of people who tell you also that just to say some magic words and people will do whatever you command or influence them to do, but then you try it and it doesn't work for you. It's more than likely not the fault of the technique, but your lack of experience in using it. Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind, because one of the greatest things about this strategy, I think you'll find over time in using it, is that it really does an excellent job at hiding your intent. And by this, I mean you can enter a conversation with an intent to change someone's minds, attitudes, even feelings and behavior without appearing that you're doing any manipulation at all, right? Instead, it'll just appear that you're having like an innocent conversation, and they'll probably even like you and trust you and open up to you, and ultimately, with a bit of luck, do what you want them to do without having to directly tell them to. And even if you do directly tell them to do something, it'll be like one friend saying just, hey, you know what? You got to try this. Go watch that movie. It's kind of like the same thing. Oh, the movie was awesome. Go watch it, and they'll appreciate you for it instead of think you're being some sort of manipulative control freak or whatever. So with that said, now that we have all that out of the way, let's get into the 4-step framework behind how this works. But before we get into that, into any conversation with anyone, okay, we need to map out what they must be going through. So these 4 steps are actually simple questions that we will ask strategically to get an idea about the person and situation, so we can discover sort of like psychically, with our best guess and effort, a series of topics to talk about in conversation. And then we just turn around and talk about them. That's how simple it is. I told you it would be easy, and it is easy. And I think I've done a pretty good job at preparing you for what we're about to get into. So the 4 questions are pretty simple. What are their top 3 desires? What are the 3 desires in the conflict or the situation that you believe the person has deep down inside? What you know about them? What do they really, really want? The second question is, what are 3 reasons why they want those top 3 desires? So when you figure out the top 3 desires, then you want to say, what are the reasons why they want those desires? Okay. The 4th question that you ask is, why wouldn't they change, act, or respond? Another way to put this is, let's say that you were doing this to sell something. You could say, what are the top 3 desires of my prospect? What are 3 reasons why they want those 3 desires? But why wouldn't they buy? Why wouldn't they want to buy? What kind of objections would they have? And the 4th and final question is, what are the 3 biggest reasons of the 3rd question? So question 3 and 4 really are pretty much, number 3 is you brainstorm as many ideas as you can. And number 4 is pick the top 3 biggest reasons of the answers that you came up with number 3. Listen, you're proof that this works. And I mean this because before I even created this video, I went through this exact same framework and answered each of these 4 questions. And once I knew the answers to these questions, I simply talked about them all the way up until this point. And here we are, right? You're either reading the transcript to this video and the PDF. Obviously, you're not. You're watching this video. But you can obviously use and model a lot of extra content in there that is available, and you can see for yourself how powerful it can be, because let's face it, without getting in your face, it must be working because you're here still paying attention. In other words, we've reviewed the answers I came up with together. And in case this is one-sided, I'm just talking to you through a computer screen, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how to bring up the topics or the answers to these questions, these 4 questions, in like a 2-way conversation. This will make more sense after I share with you the answers that I came up with. Okay, so here's what I answered for each of these questions. In the first question, what are the top 3 desires of somebody who might be watching this video? I put bring up topic of discussion without rejection during a conflict, being genuine and real in conversation, and then simplicity. They need something simple. So, and then after the question number 2, the 3 biggest reasons why you might want these things is to be liked, to be trusted, appreciated, admired, teamwork or problem solving. Maybe you want to be able to approach your spouse or someone in a group setting to create some sort of teamwork, problem solving, and then the self-confidence and ability to lead and influence others, basically without getting caught, right? Why, or even trying to come out with being a jerk. The third question, and you can find all of this listed in the PDF that came along with this video if you really want to look at it. So why wouldn't they change, act, think of as, and I think of as many as possible. So I wrote things down like they tried something similar to like this before and it didn't work. They might not believe me. What's the catch? Apathy towards the situation, which means there's really nothing that they think or believe that they could ever do to accomplish anything, right? Or they've tried everything and whatever, it's not going to work. They think it might be too complicated. They think it's unethical or too manipulative or cheap or kind of like slick and slippery. Might work for me, but not for them. In other words, it might work. Yeah, sure, Nathan, you're pretty good at this. You're a certified hypnotherapist and you've been doing covert hypnosis since you were a freshman in high school. It might work for you, but it's certainly not going to work for me, right? So these are some really good topics and ideas that I came up with. But then I selected the three biggest ones, which I thought that I believed would be the three biggest objectives were too complicated, they don't believe me, and what's the catch? Why am I even watching this? And if you go back and actually listen to what I was saying in a one-sided conversation, you'll see exactly what I mean when I pretty much touched up on all of these subjects and just talked about them with you. So if I want to bring this up quickly in conversation, let me give an example how it might sound in a two-way conversation. I'd look at the answers I gave you, and then I'd kind of sort of speak in here are the NLP language pattern way of questions, just basically me seeking answers. Okay. I'd say something to the person in a two-way conversation like, have you ever been in a situation with someone, but you didn't know how to bring it up in discussion with them so that you could be genuine and real and just wish there was a simple way to do it so you can resolve the issue? Because you know that if it were possible and there was a way to do it, you'd use it so you can just be liked, trusted, appreciated, and admired, where the two of you could work together as a team to solve the situation to the point where you look back and believe that you have an incredible ability to lead and influence people so you can get more of what you want instead of what you don't want. And at this point, what if I told you I discovered a way where it wasn't complicated? It worked really well for me and everyone else I've been showing it to, and I'd be willing to show it to you right now, no strings attached. Would you be interested? Okay, listen, that's just an example. You can find the language patterns in the report, but now that I've given you an example, now that I've shared with you these questions, this framework, you got to start using it, right? But I want to share with you three mistakes that you should really, really avoid. And the first mistake is skipping over this. While you might think that this process is overly simple, there's a lot of psychological advantages to using it that would require way too much to explain in a short lesson like this one. But you're really getting an advanced system here. It's something that took me years to figure out. So you sit down and literally answer these questions, these 4 questions. You might be surprised by how just one solution you come up with or one answer that you come up with might be all that you need to talk about in a conversation. Very powerful stuff. The second mistake is trying to get too fancy with it. I understand that you might have some background in covert hypnosis, conversational hypnosis, sales, or mind control, right? While it's certainly fine to use what you know and to apply skills that you have learned, just realize that simply talking about what you come up with is often enough without having to get too clever or too fancy or technical using language patterns and so on and so forth. Just talk about it with someone. It'll get their mind moving in the direction, where our attention goes, our energy flows. You'll be surprised to discover a lot of things just bringing something as a simple topic that you came up with by answering these 4 questions. And the third mistake is giving up too early. Sometimes if you ask someone, have you ever, which is a very powerful way to open up any kind of conversation, like I shared with you in the example, they might say no. No, I've never felt like that. I've never had an interest in life. You might be wondering, then what? Don't fear. Don't get worried about it. Either let it go for now or during that period of time and take a different approach another time, like the next conversation, or simply rephrase your question and bring up something else that is similar and see if they bite. Like later on in the conversation, be like, have you ever had this? Oh, and it's pretty much theme oriented, right? It's kind of like asking them the same thing in a different way. Okay, so now that you know this, I want you to here's pretty much the first thing that you should be doing. Okay, the first thing is think of this situation or problem behavior that you like changed in another. It could be your child, your spouse, your friend, coworker, employee, parent, sibling, right? Then answer each question of the 4 questions. Take your time with it. Don't censor it. So when it comes to mind, whatever comes to mind, just write it down, and no matter how silly it seems. And the third is spend some time formulating how you might bring up these topics to talk about. Bring it up and give it a shot in conversation. If it helps, practice it with someone over text or email or by phone or in a chat room, right? So you could sort of cheat with your answers being right in front of you. Okay, finally, you just need to practice, right? Think of this as developing a new communication skill, and with any new skill development, it takes some effort on your part to get going and keep going with it until it becomes second nature. I often like to tell people to look at it this way, okay? It's like a merry-go-round on the playground. At first, some effort is required in order to get the merry-go-round to move. And this is true for pretty much anything in life, right? Getting it going at first is the hardest part. It's going to require the most amount of energy. But eventually, the momentum, every time you really start pulling and getting it spinning around, it starts to get going, and it gets easier as you build up speed and momentum to the point where the merry-go-round sustains its own momentum, for some time. Of course, it's going to slow down a little bit, but that's when you just remember to maintain the momentum by always remembering to use it when you need it the most. Okay, so in other words, don't forget about using this framework. Again, it's very advanced material that took me many years to really narrow down and figure out and go, holy cow, this is really powerful stuff, because you can really get inside people's minds and it works great. Okay, thank you for watching this particular program. And now that you know this technique, did you know that you can reprogram your mind for automated communication success so you can make friends more easily, become attractive to others you admire, and develop inner confidence to lead and influence people without any work on your part whatsoever? Well, it's certainly true. And if you'd like to learn more about it, you can watch a video by clicking the button underneath this one to find out more. I'm Nathan Blazak. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, please let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback. Bye now.